Hey family, it's Verona from Ancestral Voices. I'm here today with another video presentation, and it will ultimately be a follow-up to the video I created way back in March titled Sacred Science and Coronavirus. Okay, there's so many things I want to discuss in this video about things that I've been experiencing myself for the last few months, and I'm sure others have been experiencing it too. And what has become extremely apparent to me over the last few months is that right now, the spiritual veil is thin, so to speak. And for those who are not familiar with that term, that means that the division between the physical and the spiritual realm is almost non-existent at the moment. And so I'm sure there's many of you out there who have found that their dreams are a lot more vivid, a lot more clear. You may be finding that you're getting them more frequently. You may find the synchronicities are just completely off the chain and you're getting them multiple times a day, whether it's number sightings, whether it's thinking about somebody and they come into your life in some shape or form, they phone you, or whatever happens, you see their name. There's all these types of things happening, and they're happening thick and fast. And that's why I say, even now more than ever, getting your mind in the right state is so important. Why? Our spiritual abilities are very strong right now. And it can be a blessing or a curse depending on where your mindset is at. So all these types of synchronicities have been going crazy for the last few months. And so for me, these are all signs that our spiritual abilities are adapting and becoming a lot more sharper. And if you are caught up in what's happening externally, i.e. the news, i.e. the panic, the drama, and everything else that's going on, then you may miss these subtle changes that are happening within. So I'd say be very mindful of allowing the external narrative to override what's going on internally, because the battle that we're facing now is an internal battle. It's a battle of yourself. It's a spiritual battle. So therefore, we can look outside, we can see all the drama, but at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do that's going to address it unless you address what's going on within yourself. And that goes back into the law of correspondence: as above, so below, as within, as without. So this external chaos, so to speak, is a reflection of what's going on internally. So it's very important that we start looking at our own internal triggers, looking at our own selves to see what are we overcoming within ourselves? What personal battles do we have? What things do we need to overcome that act as obstacles in our own lives, in our own characters, in our own mental state, in our own abilities? Because by doing that, that's where you start doing the work that needs to be done to help create the reality that you wish to see. In the previous video, I mentioned that I wrote an article several years ago that also looks at the topic of racism using the same Hermetic principles. It speaks about how racism is used frequently by the mainstream media as a way to keep us in a state of reaction, to keep us in a state of emotional trauma, to get us triggered, and to provoke us to react. This same strategy is being used again. This is a spiritual war. However, if we are talking about spirituality and spiritual knowledge, then it's really important to recognize when you are being spiritually attacked. We have to be very careful when our minds are being subjected with images that we don't need to see. I personally have no intention of watching people die on video in front of my face. Whether it's for research purposes or anything else, it's not something I do. I personally do not allow it into my spirit. What's happening now is there's so many different cases and events of these things happening that are on video, that despite all the censorship that's going on by the mainstream media and social media, that these videos are being shown to you. Now, as I keep saying, this is a spiritual war. We have to recognize what it is. And if you're in a spiritual war, one of the main things you need to do is protect your mind. And at the moment, it's been relentless. I'm telling people, at this point in time, do you still need to keep watching these images? Do you still need to keep seeing people die? What at this point, what do you get from watching it? Because you can know something's happening, you can empathize with something happening, but to continually put yourself in a state of trauma, that's just something else now. This is a spiritual trauma that keeps you in a loop, because guess what? They're going to keep doing this. This has been happening for years. And I believe before the year is out, they're going to continue to step up their game. So you either stay being traumatized by what's happening, or you choose to recognize what's happening and choose to no longer participate in the game, whatever they're playing. Protect your mind, protect your psyche, protect your spirit. You don't need to see that. Remember what I said before about the veil being thin. Where you focus your mind is extremely important, and focusing your mentality on images of our people being killed is not the place to be. As much as I'm speaking very strongly about subjecting our minds to negative imagery, then I have to also call myself out. Because as much as I was able to identify the racism one, when it came to the Hollywood expose and all what's been going on behind closed doors, they're becoming exposed, I got caught up looking into it and exploring and trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And then I realized, hold on, you're falling for the same trap again. Because is this where my mind needs to be? Am I spending too much time focusing on negativity? I mean, let's face it, that's some real negative stuff. Does my mind need to be there? And I say this not to be callous. I say this because we're in a spiritual war. And so we have to get very ruthless and militant with our mindset. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with researching. I think that healthy research is good. Make sure you understand what's going on. Join any dots that you may need to connect. That's how we spiritually grow as well, by learning, by researching, by figuring out certain codes and patterns for yourself. That's how it works. However, if your mind is continuously focusing on something negative, that's not positive for you. Okay? That's it. So with the Hollywood thing, I had to pull back. I was like, okay, you've done enough research. You know what's going on. You don't need to dwell on this anymore. A lot of people at this point in time are feeling quite hopeless and feeling like, but what can I do? In terms of some of these racial killings that are taking place, to what's going on with the children at the moment that's being exposed and how people are being trafficked, you may feel like, but what can I do to help? Now, one thing I would suggest, and I would recommend to anyone who feels as though they have no choice, they don't know what else they can do, I would recommend distance healing. Now, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We always hear that quote. We always hear people say it. But how many people actually live by that understanding? How much people put that to practice in their daily life? As I mentioned before, just by your mental state, you can impact your outer reality. Therefore, if you put your intention to sending love and healing to a particular situation or a person, you can actually start to impact that. Rather than think about the doom and gloom and the sadness of it all, why not project your mindset and your vision to changing it, to sending love to it, to dissolving it, to fixing it? So that is using your divine powers to impact change. This doesn't have to just be used for those who are in the situations I've just provided. It could also be to save family members or friends who are currently in a situation right now where you feel like you can't help them. Maybe they're struggling during to this whole pandemic situation. Maybe they're struggling because they've lost a job or whatever it is, or they're not well. Someone could just need healing. You can literally send love and healing to this person. Well, what I do, for example, is I would light a candle, and that whatever my intention is, whether it's to send healing to a particular situation or love to a particular situation, or if there's a person who is in need of healing, then what I'll do is I'll have the candle lit, and then in my mind, I will state what I'm intending to do. Then if it's a case of a person who is struggling at this time, I would picture them in their current state. And then I picture myself sharing my love and healing energy to them. And as I keep projecting my love and energy to them, I visualize their situation changing. So for example, if the person was ill, maybe had a problem walking, then in my mental state, I will picture that person now getting up and walking and being free. So I mentally create a picture of the before and after scenario, and then I'll close my prayer. And that's just one method you can use. That's just personally what I do, but you can obviously come up with your own way of doing things. We all are unique, we're all individual. So how one person does something is not necessarily the way someone else is going to do something. But as we can know already, through the power and the principle of mentalism, it's what your mind is thinking. What is your intention? And with all the negativity out there right now, to put out positive, loving intention out there is actually a very good thing. We need that. As I mentioned in the first video, there is power in neutrality. There's power in just sitting back and observing without necessarily getting involved and taking on all the energy and all the sadness, all the grief, all the depression, all the anger, which I'm constantly seeing every day when I look on my social media timeline. And I'm thinking, don't you get tired? Aren't you exhausted? Like, some of these things you don't need to take on. Like, literally, you know, if you need to come off social media for a while, then do that. Switch off your TV for a while. Do that. You need to protect yourself. It's actually, from when I made the first video, it's actually changed so much, because in the beginning, all the focus was on coronavirus. Whereas now we've seen it progress. We've seen it turn into racism. We've seen it turn into all these other aspects. And what has been very obvious to me is there has been a systematic attack on the Black psyche. And so we need to be very aware what's happening and make sure that we're not being used as a pawn in someone else's game. And unfortunately, that's what's happening, and we are falling for it. So we're either gonna realize that a game is being played and pull ourselves out of it, or we could end up in a very bad place. The choice is literally ours. What's become more apparent now more than ever is that people are literally living in the same environment, but with different experiences, and that is reflected by their mental state. So you have people that are struggling, who are depressed, who are upset, financially worried, being ill, or, worse, face like serious amount of bereavements and all sorts. And it's just been a very horrible time. And there are others who are enjoying this time, who are spending time with their families, who are setting up new businesses, or, taking up hobbies, redecorating their homes, doing some self-improvement work, developing more spiritually. Some people are making more money during quarantine than they were beforehand. So it's just showing you that your experience is literally based on your mentality. And for those who are on a fear-based mentality, are going to be more leaning towards experiences that are more negative, that are more low vibrational, rather than those who are existing on a higher frequency, because they're like, I'm happy, or I see certain things that are happening that are not positive, but I choose not to allow that to define my experience. If you can shut that matrix off and just focus on yourself, you will be in a much better place, rather than those who are paying attention to it and allowing it to dictate how they feel every day. Because at this point, when I see social media, when I see the news, it is literally like puppets on a string controlling people and telling people what they're going to think today, what you're going to be worried about today, what are you going to talk about today. And you go onto your social media feed and everybody is literally talking about the same thing, because that's what the media told them to. And I feel like those people who are not actively developing themselves spiritually are going to struggle deeply during this time and what's to come, because This is 2020. Let's be real. It's going to go on beyond 2020. Not necessarily the quarantine situation, but just the aftermath of what this year has brought. It's going to carry on for a while. So having that level of spiritual knowledge and development is going to be important. I can't shake the feeling that we are moving into a state of ma'at. And the reason why I say that is because, as we've seen over the last few months, there are a whole bunch of truths that are being revealed. Every single day, somebody is being exposed. There's some new information that is being released. And we are finding out so many things that have been hidden. And now there are so many historical injustices being addressed, and conversations that used to be had in closed spaces or behind doors are now being had publicly, which is allowing people to have conversations about how justice can be carried out. And for justice to come in, that allows for harmony and balance and order to take place, with reciprocity instead of exploitation, and propriety instead of the disgusting behavior that is being carried out by those in high-level positions of society, will allow us to move fully into that state of ma'at where we are truly living in balance. I'm going to bring this video to an end now. I feel like I've been talking forever. But yeah, just echoing from the last video, step into your power, know yourself, start connecting to that divinity that is inside you. What is your spirit telling you right now? What are your dreams telling you? Are you paying attention to those things? Because that is where your power is. That's where your spiritual guidance is. And that's what will help navigate you through this time.